course, that is our tardy bell and the signal that we should begin our lessons. I am Miss Abigail Bennett, and I welcome you to our Midway Schoolhouse. It was built in 1893 by community member J.J. Moore for a total cost of $135. We are most fortunate to have this lovely building, and we are thankful to our community members who pay their taxes that this building might stay open. Also, you know, it used to be called District 79, but in 1914, all of you school children held a contest and changed the name to Midway. I trust that you did learn to memorize your memory gem, but now we must move right along with our history lesson. Today's lesson is a most profound and in many ways sad lesson, and time will tell how it is viewed. We have been involved in a deadly flu pandemic that has stricken our country, and many people have become very ill and died. I have heard tell that in the United States, 675,000 people have died, more than even in the World War. Now, as you will recall, the war actually ended when we signed the armistice on November 11th, 1918. But peace was not actually confirmed until the Treaty of Versailles in June of this year, 1919. And sadly, even our own beloved President Wilson could not escape the ravages of the flu. He became ill at that peace treaty, but he did recover. Now, as a teacher, I have wanted to find information for you, but information has become difficult to obtain. However, I have looked in several newspapers, and I have been fortunate to find that this flu has affected the respiratory system. So we believe it is transmitted through the air. It can also be transmitted by touching your face. So of course, I have always instructed you that cleanliness is next to godliness, and now it is even more important, scholars, that you wash your face and hands regularly and you keep your hands off of your face. In addition, some of the leadership has even suggested that we place something over our mouths. Why, there has even been a phrase coined which says, obey the laws, use the gauze, protect your jaws from septic paws. A little rhyme that often helps us remember things. Such a tumultuous time indeed. Businesses have closed, and there have not been enough people to harvest the crops. Hospitals have been overwhelmed, and many people have had to convert buildings into makeshift hospitals. I am fairly certain and have heard that there are now instructions to keep your feet dry, or to open up your windows, or to put garlic or camphor in a cloth around your neck, or even to try Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup. We all must be so diligent and be patient with this thing, and always, always have a handkerchief in the proper position on our noses and faces. Now, initially also, people were quite angry, and they complained heavily about the inconvenience of this flu, and people did not like that their sporting events had been canceled. But soon, as the death toll rose, fear and desperation have set in, and people have become quite fearful. Why, no one would even speak to each other, and there were even a few people that starved because no one would bring food to them. I know that undoubtedly this year will go down in history, and one that will be studied by historians in the many years to come, because it will be a year that we've had great suffering, but also the peace from the end of the World War. Scholars, in my research, I found a statement that was written in the American Medical Association Journal, and a quote that I felt was most prudent to read to you at this time, scholars. 1918, a year momentous with the termination of the most cruel war in the annals of the human race, a year which marked the end, at least for now, of man's destruction of man. Unfortunately, though, it is also a year in which developed a fatal infectious disease, causing the death of hundreds of thousands of human beings. I know, scholars, that we all hope and pray that a war and a fatal disease like this will never, ever inflict our populations again. Oh, that would be so. And now, scholars, we also need to look at our history fact for today, which you see on the board. Washington became a state on November 11th, 1889. We are so happy for this. In addition, I would like you to now compute how old Washington State is. Of course, you know by your mathematical skills that you would take 1918 minus 1889 and find out how old Washington State is. You have earned a stretch break, scholars, and I should like for us to do that now. So will you please stand? All right then, with your hands on your hips, if you will please stretch from the waist over toward the window and back up. Now toward the chalkboard and back up. Now, if you would raise your arms high over your head, wiggle out those fingers that have been writing, stretch your toes, see if you can touch the ceiling, scholars. Then bring your arms back down, bend at the waist, and bend over and try to touch your toes. Now, to perhaps warm up those sleeping feet, let's try to do some marching in place, scholars. Let's begin. Left, right, left, right, left, right. Now do it harder. Now tiptoe, scholars. Excellent. Now to calm our heart rates and be ready for our reading lesson, we shall take 3 deep breaths. As we breathe in, you will raise your arms up thus, and as we breathe out, you will bring them down to your side. Ready, scholars, with me? And out. And out. And out. Well done. You may be seated. Now, as you're seated, if you will please find your reading book. You will need your McGuffey Third Eclectic Reader. Please turn to page 189. On the page, you see a picture of a boy and his dog. Now, pray tell, scholars, what is happening in this picture? What might have happened before? And what might have happened after? So think about the picture and listen as I read the story. It is called How Willie Got Out of the Shaft. Willie's aunt gave him a writing book and a pencil for his birthday. He thought a great deal of these gifts and always kept them in his pocket, along with the other treasures that he would find each day. One day, Willie and his dog, Caper, went out to play in a field. They came to the edge of a mining shaft. Willie bent over the top to see how deep it was, and he lost his balance and fell in. He tried so hard to get out, but he couldn't. And when the good little dog saw that his owner was in the shaft, he jumped right in with him. Willie began to cry, and then he thought about his writing book and his pencil. So he quickly got them out and wrote a letter and tied it to Caper's collar with a piece of twine that he had in his pocket. He lifted Caper out of the shaft and told him to run home. It was getting dark, and Willie's mother and father were getting quite worried about where Willie could be when they saw Caper come bounding into the yard. His father saw the piece of paper taped to Caper's collar, and the note read, "Oh, Father, come to me. I am in a big hole in the field." Everyone ran to the field, and there was Willie, alive and well in the shaft. His father reached down, caught Willie in his arms, and lifted him out. Willie ran to Caper and gave him the biggest hug he could because his little dog had saved his life. That's such a good story, and perhaps many of you have pets. And you might now write a story about maybe an adventure that you had with a pet. I should also like you to consider these 3 words for your vocabulary. They are bounding, brave, and twine. For each word, you need to write the definition and then use it in a sentence other than the one that was used in the story. Such a good story. And now, scholars, you have done an excellent job with your lessons today, and it is time for us to conclude. So with that, I say to you, class dismissed.